Chapter 7, The Infant. The following are objectives for Chapter 7. Define the term infant. State the developmental tasks of infancy. Describe the physical development of infants from 1 month to 1 year. Discuss milestones of motor development. Understand 5 basic guidelines for physical activity for infants. Discuss the development of language. Describe the theories of Piaget, Freud, and Erikson concerning infant development. Define separation anxiety. Discuss the development of attachment. Describe the basic nutritional needs of infants from 1 month to 1 year of age. List the immunization schedule for infants under 1 year. State 4 safety precautions essential in infant care. The following are important key terms for Chapter 7. Trust versus mistrust. So this is the first time for the infant where they must have their needs met, and that helps them develop trust versus mistrust. So when their basic needs are met, as far as being fed or having their diaper changed or receiving love, they learn that if they put out a response or they put out a cry, then the parents will respond in a positive manner to help that infant during that time. And the infant feels like that's a crisis because to them the biggest thing is being hungry or needing to feel that love. So when parents are receptive to this, the child learns that, oh, I can trust this environment, I am safe. So children that the parents attend to on a regular basis, they are less likely to cry at 1 year of age. And also children that are fed on a schedule, on a rigid schedule, without having the cues to show that they're hungry, they end up having some developmental issues later when it comes to gastrointestinal disturbances and also some issues with their behaviors. Understanding cause and effect. So this is developed at an early age. Babies learn that once they cry, they'll get a response out of the parents and have their needs met. Around 4 months, infants might want an end-face position, and that's where the parent faces the child. And then later on, the baby might actually want to see what's happening around the room. So that would be a little bit after 4 months. And then object permanence is where an infant can now realize that if something isn't in the infant's space, doesn't mean that that isn't around anymore. So that's why peekaboo is so fun for them, because initially they'll believe that whatever it is gone when you're covering your face, but then they can see that you're still there. So that's part of that game. Or also, if you think of if an adult leaves the room and the kid starts to scream, that's because they think the adult is gone rather than just around the corner in a different room grabbing something. Also, this is a time where infants are able to remember traumatic events, which of course can have a long-lasting effect on them, so they can retain memory of this experience. They might have a response if they had experienced choking with something. That might make them not want to breastfeed as much if that was what caused it. Of course, they can get over this, but it might take them a little bit of time. Or if they were abused, they might not want to be with anybody who looks like the person that abused them. Emotional development. So infants can learn how to mimic the expressions the parents display. So whether the parent is smiling or making a mad face or making a silly face, sticking their tongue out, then the infant can learn to do this. Also, the infant will realize what a smiling face might mean as far as the parent being happy, or if a parent makes a certain face or stares at them a certain way, that might be what the infant views as love. And it's very, very important that parents are very interactive with their kids while they're still an infant. And that helps with social development later on and also emotional development. Attachment begins long before the infant is born. The mother might feel the child moving. The mother might talk to the child, sing, have music playing. The partner, the father, might feel the baby kicking, hear the heartbeat, and that starts to form the attachment. After the infant is born, the infant will start to interact with the parents, and that forms more of an attachment for the infant, and then also for the parents. Infants will respond to parents, especially with facial expressions, by 3 months. And after 2 to 3 months, the baby might actually smile. By 5 or 6 months, they prefer their parents over other people. And then they can also look at facial expressions and body movements of the parents to realize how to respond in certain environments, especially if it's a new environment for the kid. Separation anxiety begins at 6 months of age, and memory development helps the child remember what the parent looks like whenever the parent might leave a situation or leave the child to be babysat. The infant might cry or protest when the parent leaves the room, but they start to realize that the parent is going to come back, and that helps them develop their trust and security as far as attachment goes. Also, it's good to keep in mind that parents might have expectations when it comes to the kids of how their temperament is going to be or how their emotions are going to be, and that is definitely going to play a role of how the parent views that infant at the time. So some might think their kid's being difficult, some might think their kid is being easy. It just depends on what the parents' prior expectations were. So infants who receive inconsistent responses, so the parent isn't always there, may withdraw from exploring the world, or they might be unresponsive when people try to comfort them. Or they might become rebellious and scream a lot or be angry, or in other times they might be clingy. So if you think about when kids go to elementary school, they have one teacher, and that is to help them with their separation anxiety. They'll see one friendly face that's consistent for them, and that's really important for kids. Also, it's important to help parents with the separation experience. Some parents have a difficult time letting go, and it's not even the child that's experiencing it, but it can play an effect on the child. So it's good to keep that in mind. So step one, dealing with separation, or to start the process, would be to have the child sleep in their own bed or in their own room. Step two would be leaving the infant with someone else to babysit them. Of course, the child's going to be upset at first, but they will learn to trust the other caregiver, whether it's a grandparent or a babysitter, whoever it might be. But that helps the child later on to be independent and to build trust with the other caregiver, and then also in themselves. Sometimes parents might be overprotective, and that can stifle the independence of the child, and it could affect them later on in life, especially when they go to elementary school. They might feel intense anxiety and have a hard time being left at school. Language development. So verbal language is both expressive, where the child can say it, and receptive, when they can understand it. There's also nonverbal language, and that would be the body language that goes along with what someone's doing or meaning. So that could be a smile if they're happy to see their kid. It could be, a slight frown or a louder booming voice if they're saying stop when something is dangerous. So the child takes that into consideration, and then also they learn to start using their own nonverbal cues, like pointing at stuff, leaning towards stuff, in order to show their interest in something. Also, kids start to bring their parents stuff when they're really young, because it makes them happy and they want their parent to be happy too. So in about 3 or 4 months, infants will use repetitive sounds, and that's considered babbling. And by 7 to 8 months, they use syllables with D, P, and B. So you'll hear that a lot. And they'll start to say ma or da. And then sometimes they might think ma means a bunch of different stuff instead of just the mother. And that is normal. So the first words may occur between 10 and 13 months of age, but they don't have to, and that's okay because each child is different. Or they might use a word incorrectly or might not say it the exact way we would, but that's okay because they're still learning. By the first year of age, they are committed to whatever language the parents speak in the home. So it's just very important to keep talking to the kids, to keep interacting with them, so that way they learn the language and they also understand it. So when it comes to learning multiple languages, it is okay if somebody speaks multiple languages in the home, because the kids can start to determine or decipher or understand the difference between what it sounds like with one language versus another language, like where people take breaths or where they stop, how the words sound. And then some kids can learn up speaking both languages at once, and then they'll learn to speak different languages depending on who they're speaking to. Motor development. So it's closely related to the development of perception, emotion, and cognition. And cognition is the way infants think. So babies start to extend their arm when they turn their head towards something. And then also at 3 months, they try to grab things. At 6 months, they're able to shape their hand into the grasp reflex. At 9 months, they use the pincer action, and that is where they use their thumb and their forefinger to try and grab things. And then by 2 years, they're able to use their wrists more, so they're able to feed themselves more if they haven't already developed that skill. And then also posture is important and helps with balance. And that is a developmental process. So they're able to lift their heads, then babies are able to sit, before that roll over, and then sit, and then stand, and then some babies take their steps. Of course, some babies crawl in between before they stand. A lot of babies do. There are some babies that do not. All of that is fine as long as they are beginning to learn to move around, learning to use their motor development. Physical activity. It is important for an infant to be in an environment where it's safe for them to explore, but also stimulating for them so they can continue to grow and to learn. Early motor competence and confidence can contribute to the enjoyment of physical activity throughout childhood and beyond. Autonomy. This is when the infant strives for independence. They might be able to console themselves. They might be able to sleep on their own. They might learn to sit up themselves or stand up. So all of that deals with autonomy. And on page 102 to 104 of your textbook has a table 7-2, and it shows infants as they start to develop and what those skills look like as they gain autonomy. Sleep patterns. The infant's central nervous system is beginning to mature, and so they're able to sleep longer, and also be able to regulate their sleep. So some infants, by 3 months, they're able to sleep between midnight and 5 a.m. However, there are some kids that don't get there until about 1 year of age, and both are okay situations. The goal is to help the infants develop a self-regulatory skills or patterns so they understand it's bedtime and it's easier for them to go to bed. So maybe feeding the baby dinner, maybe playing with them a little bit, or just depending on the parent, you might give them a bath right away, rock them, read them a story, dim the lights, just rub a lavender lotion on the child or give them a lavender bath. It just depends on the parents, but having consistent routines help the child understand that it's bedtime and it's time to go to bed. Role of play in fostering growth and development. So according to Piaget's sensory motor theory of development, it's fine for children to play. That's how they learn. That's how they develop their skills, and that's how they grow. So just make sure you have age-appropriate play for them, like having an infant be able to follow a finger or a toy with their eyes, or be able to turn their head, or using a mobile to help them reach for things. Also playing peekaboo with them by the age of 6 to 7 months. So those are all important. And then for Freud's theory of development, that's the infant is in the oral phase. So they understand the world by biting things, eating things, tasting things. That's just how they understand the world, and that is okay. And it's very important that children are able to be encouraged with these situations and to keep doing them. Also, sometimes kids pick up things off the floor and put them in their mouth, or pick up things and then throw it on the floor. It might be food, it might be messy. However, it's helping them learn, and it's part of their development. Nutrition. Proper nutrition is very important and essential for development. The newborn has a rooting and sucking reflex in order to get breast milk. And when newborns want to eat, it's usually at 2 to 3 hour intervals. By 4 to 6 months, they might skip feeding at nights. Infants should be on breast milk or formula for at least 1 year, or for a full year. Some people start food before then, depending on their culture. When I say food, like foods like rice, rice cereal added to the milk. It just depends on the environment and the culture. But it's very important not to have like extreme solid foods early, like nuts or anything that's full of nitrates, or honey shouldn't be given too early because of botulism poisoning. So certain foods should be used sparingly if a child is under a year old. Children can be given cow's milk at 1 year and low-fat milk at year 2. And parents should avoid tasting the food before giving it to the kid, because the parents have germs in their mouths that children haven't been exposed to yet. Also, that can be cultural too, so it just depends. Pay attention to the foods that are fed to the kids. Of course, when a jar is open, there should be a pop sound because the vacuum is broken. Also check the expiration dates. That's very important. Teeth. So primary teeth begin to erupt between 5 to 7 months of age. It is okay if it takes some children a little bit longer. So they start to teeth, so they're chewing on stuff, they're slobbering, and they might be able to eat some types of foods that dissolve easily. So their teeth help with that. But you'll see them always putting things in their mouths, especially that help with that. Cutting teeth is a difficult process. The child might seem ill even in some cases, as far as not feeling well, crying a lot, maybe even having a fever. It just depends. So that's also a time where parents should be encouraged to be patient, especially since their kid is dealing with a lot of body changes that aren't peaceful. Children that are breastfed for a long time seem to have less issues cutting teeth than children that are using breast milk. It is important not to have nursing caries, and that is cavities for children. So children that are exposed to a lot of sugar, especially if their teeth aren't brushed, or they go to sleep at night, sucking on a bottle full of juice. So we might want to watch that and make sure kids don't develop cavities early. We don't want it to become a habit. Immunizations. Well child visits are important and should be scheduled immediately before the child is discharged from the hospital. it's important in the U.S. to check the growth, development, health, and nutrition of the child, and to give the infants immunizations on their proper schedule. However, in some cultures, people don't believe in having to take the child in continuously unless something is wrong. And also, there are groups of people that do not believe in immunizing their children, and then there are other groups of people that believe in some immunizations. And then for the majority of people in the U.S., they believe in immunizing the child just to make sure the child is safe and healthy at all times and doesn't contribute to anyone else in the U.S. becoming sick. Accident prevention, that's a major cause of morbidity and mortality. So that would be cause of illness or death. And so we use car seats. And so it's very important to make sure parents know how to properly install a car seat and to properly strap the child into the